Well, the good fortune, the honor is entirely mine to mingle with all of you in Hyderabad and to be at the festival, and then now to be with all of you associated with Manthan. I have very high expectations from Hyderabad. I have very high respect for what Hyderabad does and what Hyderabad is, and for organizations and institutions like Manthan. So I do want to begin by paying my tribute and respect to the spirit in which Manthan does its work. Before I say a word or two about Gandhi and Lincoln, I think we should also recognize a person who can be discussed in the same breath, Nelson Mandela, who died not long ago. Nelson Mandela revealed an ability to sacrifice during struggle, to forgive after victory, and then to develop consensus when a new regime, a new system came to South Africa. Now, Gandhi and Lincoln were born in different time periods. Lincoln was born 60 years before Gandhi in 1809, and of course physically there was quite a contrast. Lincoln was 6'4" and Gandhi a mere 5'6". But both of them were gifted lawyers. Neither was thought to be good looking. Sarojini Naidu called Gandhi Mickey Mouse for his large ears. And Lincoln was laughed at not only for his oversized ears, but also for long arms that swung like a pendulum, for his huge hands, and for his even bigger feet. Both made fun of their looks. Lincoln was sometimes called a double-faced politician. So Lincoln said, if I had another face, would I be wearing this face that I'm wearing? Both made people around them laugh a good deal. Both had soaked up texts that meant much to their people. Lincoln had soaked up the Bible and Shakespeare, and of course Gandhi had soaked up the Gita and the Ramayana. Both expected to be killed because of their convictions, and both were killed, with both assassinations occurring on a Friday. These are well-known similarities, but there are some less obvious similarities. Each of them had a very strong self-belief. Lincoln felt, well before he ran for President of the United States, that he had something to offer on the great and durable question of the age, namely slavery. And Gandhi often expressed his awareness that his job was to lead his people to independence. In both cases, it was more than vanity. Offering himself for re-election in 1864, Lincoln genuinely thought that he could, quote, better serve the nation in its need and peril than any new man, unquote. That he was fitter than others available to reunite his bitterly divided people. In 1932, Gandhi said to Kaka Kalilkar, his close colleague, that like a pregnant woman who takes care of herself for the sake of the baby in her womb, he looked after his own fitness for the sake of the independence that he was carrying inside of him. This was his self-belief. Now, we all know that Gandhi was deeply committed to, a deep believer in, a deep promoter of ahimsa, nonviolence. Lincoln also abhorred violence. There was a war between America and Mexico well before the American Civil War. But Lincoln was very unhappy about that, how the way in which America conquered portions of Mexico, including Texas. And Lincoln deplored the violence and the loss of blood in that war. But despite Gandhi's lifelong passion for ahimsa, despite Lincoln's great unhappiness about violence, both Lincoln and Gandhi were fated to see a great deal of violence. Lincoln, of course, presided over the Civil War, which took more lives, by the way. The Civil War took more lives, more American lives, than American lives combined in World War I and World War II. And Gandhi, in the last year of his life, had to witness this terrible violence, especially in Punjab, but also in other parts of the subcontinent. So this too is worth noting, that these two men who wanted something other than violence, and in Gandhi's case, who spent his life fighting for non-violence, he was obliged, he was compelled to see so much violence around him. Now, it's also interesting how they expressed their vision. Now, Lincoln was a poet, unlike Gandhi. Lincoln also wrote some amazing poetry. And of course, his speeches were poetic, as many of you are aware. And I won't read to you the Gettysburg Address that I'm sure half of you will be able to recite, this amazing address made in November 1863. It just took a few minutes, and it's one of the world's most famous orations. And Lincoln said at the end of that address that nobody would remember what he said, everybody would remember the event, but today everybody remembers what Lincoln said, but nobody remembers the event. Now, Gandhi was not a poet like Lincoln, and not many people here may be able to recite some statements or speeches of Gandhi. But I want to quote to you one or two things from Gandhi which may appear to some at least to be somewhat Lincolnesque. In 1946, 18 months before his death, Gandhi was asked, by this time it was known that independence was coming, so somebody asked him what is his vision of independent India. And this is what Gandhi wrote, and I want you to listen to this with some care. First of all, Gandhi said, in his India, the last will be equal to the first, or in other words, no one will be the first and no one will be the last. And he continued, independence must begin at the bottom, thus every village will be a republic, having full powers. In this structure composed of innumerable villages, there will be ever widening, never ascending circles. Life will not be a pyramid with the apex sustained by the bottom, but it will be an oceanic circle, whose center will be the individual, always ready to perish for the village. The village ready to perish for the circle of villages, till at last the whole becomes one life composed of individuals, never aggressive in their arrogance, but ever humble, sharing the majesty of the oceanic circle. Therefore, the outermost circumference will not wield power to crush the inner circle, but will give strength to all within and derive its own strength from it. I may be taunted, says Gandhi, with the retort that this is all utopian and therefore not worth a single thought. If Euclid's point, though incapable of being drawn by human agency, has an imperishable value, my picture has its own value. So Gandhi has this geometric vision of India, of these concentric circles, where the individual is at the center, and nobody is high and nobody is low, and everybody is equal, everybody is interdependent, everybody supports one another. And then, of course, you all know of this famous remark or statement that Gandhi made on August 15, 1945. Somebody asked Gandhi, what is your answer to doubt? If you're in a dilemma, if you're uncertain, if you don't know what to do, how should you behave? How should I behave when I have a doubt? And this is Gandhi's well-known statement. Whenever you are in a doubt, or when the self becomes too much with you, recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man whom you may have ever seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him or to her. To her is what I'm adding now, but Gandhi's him included her. Will he or she gain anything by it? Will it restore him or her to a control over their own life and destiny? In other words, will it lead to Swaraj for the hungry and spiritually starving millions? He says people are starving in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual sense. Then you will find your doubts and yourself melting away. So I find that Gandhi's vision is somewhat similar to Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, which also, of course, speaks about all people are created equal and about equality. Now, another well-known statement of Lincoln goes something like this. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. The last best hope of earth. On January 12, 1948, only 18 days before he was assassinated, when Gandhi had just commenced a fast against attacks on minorities in India and attacks on minorities in Pakistan. That fast was against attacks on minorities in India and against attacks on minorities in Pakistan. And this is what Gandhi said, that if India took the appropriate steps and defended the minorities, the reward will be the regaining of India's dwindling prestige. I flatter myself with the belief that the loss of her soul by India will mean the loss of the hope of the aching, storm-tossed and hungry world. So he's using words very similar to the words from Lincoln that I've quoted. Now we all know that both Lincoln and Gandhi were faced with this question of portions of the country seceding or wanting to secede. In Lincoln's case, the South had seceded from the Union, and Lincoln finally waged war on the seceding states. Gandhi also was faced with the possibility of division in India, of parts of India becoming another country, and Gandhi was deeply pained by it. They say about Lincoln that he was not a passionate man. He hardly ever showed his deep feelings except when it came to the question of the unity of the United States. And the union of the United States was Lincoln's greatest passion. And to give you an idea of Gandhi's passion also about the unity of India, in October 1939, you know, the famous Muslim League resolution for division of India was passed in March of 1940 in Lahore. And this is now December 1939 before that resolution. But somebody had written to Gandhi asking for a separate Muslim homeland on the subcontinent to be detached from the rest of the subcontinent, from the rest of India. And after receiving this letter, this is before the Pakistan resolution, but the letter contained aspects of the future resolution. And this is what Gandhi wrote in October 1939 in his journal, Harijan. Why is India not one nation? Was it not one during, say, the Mughal period? Is India composed of two nations? If it is, why only two? Are not Christians a third nation? Parsis a fourth, and so on? Are the Muslims of China a nation separate from the other Chinese? Are the Muslims of England a different nation from the other English? You know, today, people ask about the very large Muslim community in the UK, and people write about the Muslim community of China, but this is Gandhi writing in 1939 about the Muslims of China and the Muslims of England. How are the Muslims of Punjab different from the Hindus and Sikhs of Punjab? Are they not all Punjabis? drinking the same water, breathing the same air, deriving sustenance from the same soil? Are Muslims all over the world a separate nation? Or are the Muslims of India alone to be a separate nation distinct from the others? A Bengali Muslim speaks the same language that a Bengali Hindu does, eats the same food, has the same amusements as his Hindu neighbor. They dress alike. I have often found it difficult to distinguish by outward sign between a Bengali Hindu and a Bengali Muslim. So then, of course, came the Muslim League resolution of March 1940 in Lahore asking for separate homeland or separate homelands. It was not very clear whether they wanted one or two separate units. Then in September of 1940, a few months after the March 1940 resolution of the Muslim League, this is what Gandhi said, speaking in Bombay. I'm speaking not as a Hindu, I'm speaking as a representative of Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, and all who live in India. I would say to my Muslim brethren, cut me to pieces first and then divide India. You are trying to do something which was not attempted even during the Muslim rule of hundreds of years. We shall not allow you to do it. 7 years later, however, India was divided. The Hindu-Muslim question, which was similar in some, though not in all ways, to America's North-South divide, was, quote-unquote, resolved through the 1947 partition of India. Now, Lincoln went to war against the South, and there was great bloodshed, but eventually the United States was united. Gandhi did not go to war to keep India united. In fact, Gandhi did not even go on a fast until death to prevent partition. He was against partition. He was saddened by it. He was deeply wounded by the idea. He felt it was a great mistake. It would cause great unhappiness to everybody. But he did not ask the Indian government to go to war over it. And he did not himself go on a fast unto death to prevent it. Now, many people have raised this question. Why did Gandhi not fast unto death to prevent partition? He himself has answered this question because this question was put to him in the months before he died. And his answer was something like this. All my colleagues, Sardar Patel, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rajagopalachari, Rajendra Prasad, they all want partition. The Indian public seems to want it. The Punjabis all want it. The Punjabi Muslims want it. The Punjabi Hindus want it. The Punjabi Sikhs want it. Similarly, in Bengal, there is a large support for partition. And he said that when everybody is for something, why should I impose my will over them? That was one explanation he gave. But there was another understanding that I have of this, which is something like this. Gandhi knew that if he went on a fast unto death, that was not going to have any impact on the Muslim League leadership, who were determined to have a separate country, that he would be allowed to die. And when he died, there would be greater anger and greater Hindu-Muslim tension, and many Hindus would be very angry with the Muslims, and there would be serious violence and more killings. In my understanding, I have no proof about this. This is only my understanding of the man. That was one reason why Gandhi did not contemplate or execute a fast unto death to prevent partition, because he knew that it was not going to result in a change in the position of the Muslim League or of the British. And also, by this time, the Congress leadership was really not with him. And by this time, although earlier they had opposed the idea of partition, the leaders of Congress were enthusiastic about partition. And as we all know, and as is shown in this study of Punjab's history about which I spoke earlier today, in March of 1947, it was the Indian National Congress Working Committee and the Sikh and Hindu leaders of Punjab who demanded the partition of Punjab. Earlier, when the Muslim League wanted the partition of India as a whole, the Congress said, never, 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 we are against partition. But in March of 1947, after some terrible riots had taken place in Rawalpindi and Multan, the Congress took the lead, and the Sikh political parties in Punjab took the lead and said, Punjab must be partitioned. And the consequence was that also the implication was that Bengal would need to be partitioned, really India would need to be partitioned. So it is interesting that by March of 47, the initiative for partition came actually from the Indian National Congress rather than from the Muslim League, which had earlier made the demand for partition of India as a whole. Jinnah Sahib said that all of Punjab should belong to Pakistan. Punjab should not be partitioned. All of Bengal should belong to Pakistan. Assam should belong to Pakistan. And this, of course, was not something that anybody could accept because Eastern Punjab had a Hindu majority. Western Bengal had a Hindu majority. And nobody could accept that. Even the British were not unwilling to accept that. And so finally agreement was reached on partition of Bengal, partition of Punjab, and partition of the country as a whole. Now, it is wrong to imagine that Gandhian non-violence came in the way of undoing Pakistan or partition. Some people think that. Some people say that just as Lincoln went to war to prevent the partition of the United States, why didn't India go to war to prevent Pakistan being created? Now, the fact is that at the time, neither Sardar Patel, nor Jawaharlal Nehru, nor anybody else in the Congress, nor even the Hindu Mahasabha, which was a political party at the time with some influence, not very strong, but some influence, none of them even advocated the idea of a war. Everybody realized that quite apart from the rightness or wrongness of war, quite apart from the question of violence or non-violence, it was not physically possible to undo. India did not have, the Indian government did not have the strength at the time to undo that partition. So Gandhi's aim at that point became not to undo partition, but to create an atmosphere for reconciliation, for friendship. All right, there will be a boundary. There is a line. There is an international boundary carved within India, two halves of India. But we can maybe live with those boundaries. And Hindus and Muslims within India can be friends. Hindus and Muslims within Pakistan can be friends. And the Pakistanis and the Indians can be friends. This became his great passion in the final months of his life. And also that the minorities in both countries should have equal rights. This is what Gandhi says on 13th of June, 1947. When God is here, there and everywhere, God must be one. That is why I ask whether those calling God Rahim would have to leave India, whether in the part described as Pakistan, Rama as the name of God would be forbidden. Would someone who called God Krishna be turned out of Pakistan? We in India shall worship God as Krishna and as Kareem and show the world that we refuse to go mad. In line, this is my comment now, in line with Gandhi's convictions, India adopted a constitution that rejected the idea of a Hindu India next to a Muslim Pakistan. Though the new India was smaller than what Gandhi had imagined, it was an India for all its inhabitants. If Lincoln preserved the Union, Gandhi also preserved a Union of India, which is India's full and correct name, assuring equal rights to all in its truncated space. Now, another great similarity between Lincoln and Gandhi is that Lincoln had to face slavery and the way in which the whites of America were treating the blacks, and Gandhi had to face the great question of untouchability and the way in which the so-called caste Hindus treated the so-called untouchables. Very similar situations. And here again, there's both a remarkable similarity in the passion with which both Lincoln opposed slavery and Gandhi opposed untouchability, the way in which Gandhi wanted equality and the way in which Lincoln wanted equality, although it has to be acknowledged that Lincoln's early positions were not the same as his final positions. And there were times when he made some statements which were, frankly, quite derogatory to the blacks. Lincoln changed his position as time went on. And it has to be acknowledged, even in Gandhiji's case, that although he was passionately opposed to untouchability from the very start, unlike Lincoln, Lincoln said that he was totally against intermarriage between blacks and whites. Gandhi never said that. In the latter phase of his life, he said that the only marriages he would bless in a special way or he would attend would be where one party was from the caste Hindus and one party was from the so-called untouchables. So Gandhi adopted a radical stance. But in his early statements, Gandhi seemed to say that the caste system as such had something good about it. And this, of course, was very strongly disliked by many of the leaders of the untouchables, especially Dr. Ambedkar and many others too. Many radical Hindus also felt that Gandhi was too traditional in some of his remarks. But my understanding when I study those remarks is Gandhi is defending an ideal system. He's defending some kind of ideal caste system which never exists in practice, and Gandhi says it does not exist in practice. Just as Lincoln needed not only to win the support of the blacks of America, he needed to carry the whites of America. Unless the whites of America were willing to change, America would never change the way Lincoln wanted America to change towards equality. Similarly, Gandhi not only needed the support of the Muslims or the support of the so-called untouchables, he needed the support of the caste Hindus. And he was very keen to carry them along also. But with time, Gandhi's language also became radical, and he opposed the caste system as much as he opposed untouchability. But I want to quote to you some lines of Gandhi's statements about caste to show his passion on the question of equality and his passion against untouchability. This is what Gandhi says in 1916, within a year of his return to India, after spending 20 years in South Africa. Quote, "Every affliction that we labor under in this sacred land, every affliction that we labor under in this sacred land is a fit and proper punishment for this great and indelible crime that we are committing." So Gandhi says, we caste Hindus have committed a terrible crime, and every problem that we have is somehow connected to this crime of ours. In 1921, this is after Jallianwala Bagh, the terrible massacre in Amritsar, this is what Gandhi says. "What crimes for which we condemn the government have we not been guilty of towards our untouchable brethren? We make them crawl on their bellies. We have made them rub their noses on the ground. With eyes red with rage, we push them out of railway compartments. What more than this has British rule done?" And you all know, or maybe some of you know, and all of you should know, I mentioned earlier Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. As powerful as Lincoln's Gettysburg Address is his second inaugural address, which he made when he became president for the second time. And this is what he says in his second inaugural address. By this time, the war is nearly over. The Union is winning. The South is losing. And this is what Lincoln says about slavery. "Yet, if God wills that the war continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether." So Lincoln is saying that we, the whites, with our lash, we caused blood to be drawn from black bodies, and now we have to pay with our blood. So it is very strong stuff. And Gandhi and Lincoln saw great national sin of inequality, cruelty towards people we regard as inferior. Now, I will soon sit down, and I hope we can have a conversation. But I want to just touch on two things before I do that. One is, what explains the similarity between Lincoln and Gandhi across the boundaries of time and space and culture? Yes, Gandhi did study Lincoln to some extent. And when he had this journal called Indian Opinion in South Africa, in the year 1905, this is what Gandhi writes about Lincoln. It is believed that the greatest and the noblest man of the last century was Abraham Lincoln. Gandhi is writing only 5 years after the 19th century is over. But he says that the greatest and the noblest man of the last century was Abraham Lincoln. But I at least have not found too much evidence of the great study that Gandhi has made of Lincoln's life in great detail. So how is it that there are these similarities? And the conclusion that I have found is something like this: that both of them very deeply believed that all human beings had equal worth, equal value. Everybody had equal value. That one person's domination of another person was a great sin. Each wished to win all components of his diverse nation. Lincoln wished to win over all components of America. Gandhi wished to win over all components of India. And both Gandhi and Lincoln decided to give their deepest to meet the toughest challenge. India had a very tough challenge called untouchability and caste inequality. America had a very tough challenge called slavery. And both Lincoln and Gandhi decided to give their deepest to face this toughest challenge. I earlier mentioned Mandela. Now I will mention Martin Luther King Jr. And this is what Martin Luther King Jr. said in March of 1959. This is just after he had made a visit to India and had returned to the United States. Referring to Gandhi, this is what King says in Montgomery, Alabama on 22nd March 1959. They killed him, this man who had galvanized 400 million Indians for independence. One of his own fellow Hindus felt that he was a little too friendly towards the Muslims. Here was a man of love falling at the hands of a man with hate. But the man who shot Gandhi only shot him into the hearts of humanity. Just as when Abraham Lincoln was shot, mark you, for the same reason that Gandhi was shot, that is, the attempt to heal the wounds of a divided nation. And Secretary Stanton said, now Lincoln belongs to the ages. So King says, now Gandhi belongs to all of humanity. Of course, King himself was to be shot, and he too then entered the hearts of humanity all over the world. So I think I will stop here. I hope there will be a conversation. I know that my good friend Ajay Bhai said to me, you must tell everyone about Gandhi. What was so special about him? I said to him, I'm a dull and boring academic. I've prepared this talk on Lincoln and Gandhi. I will speak about that. But if there are some other questions people wish to ask, or if they want me to speak more about Gandhi in a personal sense, I will try to do so. But I thank you all for listening to me.